The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
Are the Knicks and Cavs in a tier of their own in the Eastern Conference?
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
Well, the top two teams in the Eastern Conference this year, I think it's safe to say everybody believes in some way, shape, or form going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers and the New York Knicks. The Knicks, of course, coming off of their first conference finals appearance in a very long time, and the Cavs coming off of a very disappointing postseason. So bringing in Gavin Shaw to talk about everything that has changed or hasn't changed with the New York Knicks since the last time we spoke. Gavin, obviously, the Knicks went on a very lengthy postseason run that I think it's fair to say very many people did not expect getting to the conference finals. Just about everybody, including myself and maybe even you, had picked the Boston Celtics to beat them in the conference semifinals. That did not happen, and the Knicks got as close as 2 games away from going to the NBA Finals. But what's the summer been like in New York?
I think it's been a successful one. Biggest thing for me was that they moved on from Tom Thibodeau. I was going to talk about this later, but I was going through my Knicks Cavs notes from last season in anticipation of this matchup, and I wrote at some point during Game 2 in just in a haze because it was that kind of game where Cleveland won 142-105. Quote: "The Knicks don't have a substantial talent deficit in this matchup. They do have a substantial coaching deficit." I don't know if that's a bar or not, but I think it held true. And I think despite the fact that the Knicks made the conference finals, it was warranted to move on from Tom Thibodeau. He was consistently over-reliant on to the point that it was far and away the most played lineup in the NBA, a lineup that was not really good in 2025 in their starting five. Just failed to make adjustments throughout, was not particularly creative offensively, though again, the biggest thing in that was player deployment and just the combinations he chose, something I think Kenny Atkinson is very good at, and the Knicks could learn from the Cavs a little bit on. But that was the single biggest thing. Gershon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson, getting them for a combined $7 million, I think is just a major win for the New York Knicks. I think those guys are substantial upgrades over what the Knicks had in their 7th and 8th spots a year ago. Both excellent shooters. Clarkson, a really underrated shot creator. I think they're going to make the Knicks a lot better. And then everyone else is back. Obviously, in a perfect world, maybe they swing a trade for Giannis, but that was never really realistic. I think they had a really successful offseason.
When they fired Tibbs, which I think a lot of people expected to happen if they were not getting by Boston. But obviously they go on this run in the postseason and they have these magnificent comebacks against the Boston Celtics, where I think they were down by 20 in at least 2 of the wins they had against the Celtics.
First 2 games of the series.
Yeah, they were both 2 games in Boston, down by 20, come back, have these incredible wins, and they find a way to win the series. And yes, I know everyone's going to bring up Jason Tatum's Achilles injury, but they were winning. They were about to go up 3-1 when that injury happened. Like, I think that with or without that injury, the Knicks were probably going to win that series. With that happening, how surprised were you that after getting over that hump, after beating Boston, after getting to the conference finals, that the Knicks still decided it was time to move on from Tibbs?
I was maybe a tiny bit surprised. It certainly wasn't a shock. I trust Leon Rose. I trust this front office. They were pretty close to firing Tom Thibodeau during a bad stretch. I think at the start of the 2022-23 season, like they've gotten up to that brink before. Tibbs, to his credit, pushed past it. And I've tried to emphasize this to people as much as I think on our podcast and the Locked On Knicks side of this listening knows. Alex and I have probably been deemed anti-Tibbs. Like there's a world where this doesn't work out for the New York Knicks, right? Because he certainly brought like a level of competency. I think this was one of the best player development staffs in the NBA. We saw just an immeasurable number of guys get significantly better, have career seasons under Tom Thibodeau. And he was just by like a stratospheric margin their most successful coach in the last 25 years. So in that sense, it was a surprise. And yet I'm very much a process over results kind of guy. And I think there was a recognition perhaps from the players, certainly from Leon Rose in this front office, that the process probably superseded the results. And there was a world where they lost the Detroit Pistons in round one, and this wasn't really much of a decision to be made. Like, a bunch of those games were decided by 5 points or less. I think it's a credit to Jalen Brunson and really just this whole roster, the mettle they showed getting out of that series, battling the Boston Celtics, to your point, and the ability to come back late in those games. Probably the best third quarter in Knicks history in game 4 of that series, fighting their way back against the Indiana Pacers in a series where it would have been incredibly easy for them to lay down. And they were again down by 20 points with a chance to go down 3-0 in game 3. And some of that is a credit to Tibbs. I think it is a recognition from the front office about what's real about that run, which this team is talented enough to make the NBA Finals. They might be talented enough to win the NBA Finals. And with more optimal coaching, there's a world where there's an even better result than an Eastern Conference Finals.
So do you view Mike Brown as more optimal coaching? Like, do you think that was the correct and a hire that's going to make a big enough difference when next postseason arrives? Because this is not a move, let's be honest, it's not about the regular season in the same way that the Cavaliers, when they fired JB Bickerstaff after the previous season, that move was not about the regular season. It was about the postseason. I think that this Knicks move, firing Tibbs and hiring Mike Brown, very similar. I'm just curious how you view Brown as a postseason coach.
Yeah, I think he certainly wasn't the most exciting option on the table. The Knicks very famously canvassed essentially the entire NBA. I don't know, okay, maybe a sign of respect. I don't know if Kenny Atkinson was one of the coaches they at least publicly reached out to, got shut down a whole lot. It seemed pretty well telegraphed that Jason Kidd was their number one option. He seemingly wanted to go to New York, could not get out of his contract in Dallas, so that didn't happen. I am happy with Mike Brown. Like, I give it a solid B for now, and I'm kind of waiting on what it actually looks like. But from everything I've gathered, he is a little bit more willing to be versatile in his approach. Tom Thibodeau was very much the mindset of, like, I know how to play winning basketball. I've had a lot of success. I am going to, if it's a square player in a round hole, God damn it, we're squeezing it in there. We're going to make it work. And I think Mike Brown is a little bit more willing to be adaptable, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. Obviously, just a couple seasons removed from coaching the Kings to the playoffs for the first time in 16 years. That season, they had the best offense in NBA history. My biggest question about him is going to be his willingness to make adjustments from a lineup perspective. That is something I mentioned earlier, but it was a theme all season long from the New York Knicks, an unwillingness in particular to play 5 out and lean into Karl Anthony Towns' greatest strength. Deuce McBride was the one player on the New York Knicks roster that was in all 5 of their best lineups, and yet Tom Thibodeau consistently reluctant to rely on him at the end of games, even though it allowed teams to put a wing on Karl Anthony Towns, and neutered what at the beginning of the season was right up there with the Cavs as one of the better offenses in NBA history. So I'm fascinated to see how Mike Brown approaches the starting lineup. Does he stick with what Tom Thibodeau did and thinks difference in tactics could actually make that lineup really effective, even though it wasn't? Does he go double big like Tibbs was forced to do late in the playoffs? Or does he lean into shooting and actually go 5 out? We're going to see. He did bury Keon Ellis in Sacramento, which is a little bit scary because I think that's kind of a facsimile for what happened with Deuce McBride. But overall, I'm pretty confident in him tactically. I think just like Tom Thibodeau, he'll be able to handle the much feared, maligned New York media market. So we'll see. But I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about Mike Brown.
So one of the things that I've been asking in these conversations that I've been having with other people that cover Eastern Conference teams is, what is the ceiling of the team that you cover? But I think that the ceiling of the Knicks is winning the title, and they were in the conference finals last year, and I would imagine that you would agree with that.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
There is something off about how this Celtics ownership transition is going.
What up?
Tommy Dubs, what's going on, Tom?
I now own the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, it's I think that's kind of how this is working. It's weird, right? Like, this whole thing has been
Chisholm, Westerholm is a Close friend.
Bill Chisterholm.
Chisholm.
West
I believe
Chisholm.
Westerholm is west of home in my native Swedish. So Bill is Bill of Chiselholm.
Chiselholm.
something.
Chisels out homes
Yes.
out
Yep.
of stone.
He is a hobbit and he lives in the side of a hill. Yeah.
Well, he's going to be the Celtics owner is what he's going to be eventually.
Griffin.
Eventually. So, okay. The news of the day is Wick Grossbeck is not going to be the governor, the front-facing main owner of the Celtics when this is all said and done, because he doesn't own enough of the team. So Bill Chisholm is going to be the governor. Wick is going to be the alternate governor. Whatever that means, just technically speaking. One person has to be the face of the franchise. And the deal is supposed to be closed soon within the week. But okay, let's start with the news of the day, which I don't think affects much. Honestly, like Wick is going to be around. He's still going to be the CEO. Yeah. He's still going to be part. I think the way it's been characterized is they're still going to be working together as like Bill Chisholm is going to be like, okay, yeah, I'm learning the ropes here. Wick, we're going to keep this kind of seamless. You're still there every day, whatever. They're however that works between two super rich guys is up to them. But I don't know. My first reaction is not one of like, oh my God, something's going wrong. I think on this particular bit of news, I'm like, okay, yeah, this actually makes more sense than what the arrangement was before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I do think that, like, as far as news of the day goes, right, it is notable just in terms of like, I think that part of the transition of power that kind of was just, okay, I think we can all deal with this for Celtics fans was the fact that, like, okay, Wick is still around, Wick still has a powerful voice within the organization, right? Because like, I think for a lot of Celtics fans, Wick is such a huge Celtics fan himself and cares so deeply about this team and wants to win so badly that that's always been a little bit of a security blanket, I think, for Celtics fans, right? Of like that, okay, like I see other owners coming in, I see what's been happening with the Bulls for however long. I see all these awful ownership groups that don't want to don't want to spend money, or they want to spend money too fast and they mess everything up. And the Celtics have this guy who's been around forever, and that's great. And then when he's not, when that dynamic is changing a little bit, that starts to get a little different. Yeah. Different isn't always good. It's not always bad, but it's not always good. So I think it's interesting because different is going to be even more different than we thought it was going to be. And if you're a Celtics fan, I understand the instinct to be like, I don't know about this one.
Yeah, I think this okay. I want to start by saying the arrangement that was supposedly in place was always just a little weird to me anyway.
For sure, yes.
That a guy would come in and pay $6 to $7 billion because half the team is valued at $6 billion, and then when he closes the deal for the rest of the team, is going to be valued at $7.5 billion.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money. Whoever is paying the money, which is another thing I want to get to, but it's a lot of money for a guy to come in and be like, yeah, the guy who was running it before you can still be the face of the franchise, even though I'm the guy that did all the work and was doing the interviews, being like, hey, look at me, I'm the new Celtics owner. I don't expect rich people like that, who generally have egos, who generally want the credit, to be like, nah, I'm going to fade into the background and let Wick Grossbeck take all of the credit for whatever is happening here.
I spent $7 billion just to be happy to be here. That's
just to be like, I'm the guy sitting next to Wick at the games. Like that I never bought that. So
no, for sure.
Now Apparently the league rules do not allow Wick to be the governor. He has to be the alternate governor because he doesn't own enough of the team, which, dirty little secret, he never really owned much of the team. It was always in the Grousbeck family, whatever trust. It was always his father that was mostly financing all of this. Fine, no problem. Who cares, right? He's still super rich, and he's the guy that was making the decisions. He's the governor of the team. However you want to do it, I don't care. But the transition to expect to be there and be like, no, I'm still here in this transition. I never bought it. I never thought it was going to go that way. So that's why I'm like not surprised. And I'm not sitting here going like, oh God, something is off here.
Yeah.
Actually, something was off before to me. And this is like, okay, this makes much more sense. And so this actually, of all of the things that I'm about to say that don't make me feel great about how this ownership change is going, this is the one thing that I'm like, okay, at least this makes a little sense.
For sure. And you have to have some sympathy for Chisholm, right? Because like, well, I don't know if I have sympathy for anybody in that particular tax bracket necessarily, but like, you understand what I'm saying. He's coming into a complicated situation, right? Because he bought the team, and and by buying the team, he is ousting that security blanket that I talked about before, right? So even if you have the best intentions for this team, people are going to be nervous about you, and like, that's an uncomfortable position to be in, and you don't want to be the guy who came in and not only bought the team, but also just unceremoniously booted the security blanket and said, get out of here. So if said security blanket really wanted to still be up around the team, there's going to be some awkward conversations about like, well, listen, I hear you. And, we really appreciate everything that you did. Really appreciate everything you did. Alternate. We appreciate everything you did. And you're
the alternate.
Like
I swear I'll take some time off and you can do plenty of the governor stuff.
Yeah.
But it's very
maybe like August kind of time off. I'll be on for the big stuff, but when Locked On Celtics goes down to 3 episodes a week, that's when you can do the
That's like it's very much The Office, assistant regional manager. Assistant to the regional manager.
Assistant. You're the alternate to the governor.
Yeah, that's so. But your point is well taken. Wick was here. He's held up the trophy twice. He's made promises and mostly followed through.
Yeah.
And now here comes the VC, guy that no one heard of. That all of a sudden it happens to be with second apron. Guys getting traded, all of a sudden money's an issue, which I don't think is connected to him, but just like this is just bad timing. And there are plenty of people, but there are plenty of people who are like, oh, new owner comes in, look at all the money that's being drained away from this team. It's got to be the venture capitalist guy coming in and being like, okay, that goes away, that goes away, that goes away, that goes away.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Well, Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Dejounte Murray looks great on Instagram as he rehabs his Achilles.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
Dejounte Murray and his return from the Achilles injuries. Look, he suffered this injury back on, it was January 31 in the first quarter of that game against the Boston Celtics. in general, an Achilles injury is a 9 to 12 month long injury. When you look at other NBA players that have gone through really similar injuries like this, Kevin Durant was about a 14-month return till he looked like himself. DeMarcus Cousins suffered here in New Orleans, was a 12-month return. You've seen people do it quicker. Wesley Matthews did it in 2015 in 7 months. Rudy Gay dealt with this in about 9 months. Kobe Bryant about 8 months. So you see some players can do it quicker, but when you look at the guys who've come back quicker than a year, their production takes a very significant drop when it comes down to it. And that's kind of what concerns you about this. This is not an injury that you can rush. Dejounte Murray is a guy that heals very quickly. We saw that with his hand injury. We've seen it just other times when he's suffered injuries in his career as well. And everything he's posting on social media, particularly Instagram, looks absolutely great. You could see he's bulked up, particularly in the upper body. He is someone who looks like he is putting in the work. He's already walking. He's going through the normal, usual steps here. And as I said, he looks good. It's just really as simple as that right now for what you see from him here. So looking at where he is, right now, you're usually in a time frame, right? 9 months from when this injury occurred is November 1. So that's after the start of the regular season. In that kind of 6 to 9 month period, which is where we are with this right now, you start to do more basketball related things. It's less about just introducing strength to the leg, mobility to the leg, to the injured part, and doing things like light cutting drills. You're doing some sprinting, you're doing some dribbling, shooting, and you're really monitoring it to make sure there's no swelling, no pain after intensive activity. But it's not quite basketball related activities yet. This is an injury that you need to monitor very closely so that you don't ramp it up too quickly and risk a re-aggravation or another injury to another body part. This is very much connected to the calf and so on with that. So he's still not really kind of in what you would call almost like a controlled practice environment and doing contact related drills. Now, there's still time before the season starts. It's just August right now. We're still about 2 months or so away, about 2.5 months before the regular season starts. But when you look at this injury, basically suffered on, at this point, February 1st, let's call it to make the numbers kind of easy here. You are a little over 6 months away, but this is a period of when you do that gradual reintroduction of things that takes about 3 months or so just to make sure that you don't rush back from this injury whatsoever. If 9 months is when you really start to do more basketball related things, that's after the season starts. Now, given that Murray comes back from injuries quicker, from what we've seen, and seems to be making really, really good progress here. And look, that dude is got the right type of mentality, the right type of intensity to attack a rehab program in the correct way. There's no concerns that he's going to do everything he can to be back out on the court. But he's still a couple months away at this point from doing more basketball related things, right? He's not doing full court drills right now. You're not working on kind of change of motion, rapid change of motion right now, which we'll talk more about that in the next segment when we talk about like what his return to play on the court will be when he is playing. But he's not working on like slide drills, defensive things like that, nor is he going to be doing 5-on-5 yet, which is what the Pelicans are going to make him do a bunch of before he returns to play, right? That's kind of what you're looking at. There's likely still some, and I've talked to some doctors about this, if you can't tell, some, their words, biomechanical deficiencies in some of his movements and things like that, jumping, landing, which can lead to other injuries here. So he has still got a way to go, I think, when it comes to all of this. But he will really be able to kind of position himself well to get back and do all of that here. So he will get there eventually, but it's still going to be a little bit of, hey, you've got to work on some of kind of these more basic things when it comes to all of this. And when you look at some of the other players, Kevin Durant, DeMarcus Cousins, you tend to see a big drop off in production too, the quicker it takes, right? Kevin Durant took longer, and he's more of an outlier than anything, where basically all of his numbers are identical to what they were post-injury. Well, that's what we're going to hope is going to be the case for Dejounte Murray, but he's got to make sure he's taking the time when it comes to it here, because his skill set, I think, translates better to a post-Achilles injury than some others do. And that is something I'm slightly worried about when it comes to Murray. But he's going to go through that more controlled practice and contact. And then it's kind of the full ramp up to competition. And that's what I want to look at next, coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, because when he does come back, even if he comes back early, right? Say this isn't 12 months and it's not until February, or say he comes back in January, something like that. It's not just going to be he's good to go and it's as simple as that. Once you get back to playing, you really do see a dip of about 20% in production. But for Murray, I think it's going to be a little bit more different to quantify. So we just kind of went over, a little bit of where Murray is in his rehab. He should be looking good right now. It's nothing, I don't want to say it's nothing hard. It's definitely hard. And he seems to be attacking it all in the correct way. And frankly, he just looks on schedule to me, which I'll take. Knowing the injury history here in New Orleans, I will take him being on schedule when it comes to it. Truthfully, that is not a bad thing for me to kind of see from him or say. But what's it going to look like when he gets back and plays, and looking at his first couple weeks back, first handful of games back, when he is back to playing, right? It is somewhere going to be between November 1 and February 1st, right? That's likely where this is going to land. I tend to think it's going to be more on the conservative side, knowing how the Pelicans medical staff has operated in the past. But that was also under David Griffin. We're now in the Joe Dumars era, where he does seem to be empowering the players maybe a little bit more so than David Griffin did. So maybe that means Murray, if he feels good to go, is going to come back on the earlier side of things. But in general, they've tended to play these type of injuries and just safer, more conservative when it comes to guys coming back from injuries, to just not risk another long-term injury. But once he comes back, it's not like he's just going to be back to normal, right? This is someone who is going to be on a minutes restriction probably for a little bit, in my opinion, I think, right? This is something that, might take 6+ weeks for him to get back to 90% of what he was doing before in terms of minutes. For the first handful of games, let's call it 5 or fewer, he's playing 10 to 15 minutes per game. He's not going to be playing back-to-backs whatsoever. Basically, what you're trying to do here is test the Achilles in real game speed while you're trying to manage fatigue and swelling with it to prevent any sort of other injury from happening. Weeks, the next couple of weeks for him then are slowly increasing this, assuming he's responding well to being out there on the court, right? You ramp him up to 18 to 23 minutes, let's say. You're not going to give him heavy minutes on consecutive nights. He's not even going to really be playing back-to-backs at this point in time. And that's probably what it's going to be looking at, and if you're playing a weaker team, maybe you can play him a few extra minutes here and there. After that, you're looking at him getting from about 24 to about 30 minutes or so per game. And that's where he's probably going to be for the majority of the season. Look, if he comes back on the later end of this, and it takes 6 weeks then for him to kind of get back. So let's say he returns on February 1st, right? Let's put it 6 weeks from there. That puts you about mid-March. You've got another month of the season for him to kind of be fully ready to go, 100% of what he was before. At that point, is there any, you're going to play him those kind of minutes because you want him to get those reps and really recover. But you can start to see that he's not going to maybe have the most impactful impact. Wow, I'm good at my job on the season when it comes to all of this, because of that. But the other thing, beyond just the limited minutes, as you kind of ramp him up to being able to play 30+ minutes, which is going to be 6+ weeks out when that sort of thing, right? And you can't have big sudden minute spikes. It's a gradual ramp up for all of that, with a lot of data behind it. They use force plates, which is something that kind of all NBA teams are using. It's in vogue right now, really to be able to kind of check the fatigue on the leg. And if that comes back even a little bit different, then yeah. By the way, those force plates, you'll see the trainers and the players kind of jumping on this thing with 4 posts on it. It's usually on the baseline before games. It kind of tracks what's your baseline number when you jump? And does that change when you jump off of it now? And if that number is lower, it means, this player's fatigued. That can impact the minutes that you give to somebody in a game when it comes to things like that. If you look at the kind of history of guys and their minutes ramp up, Klay Thompson, when he went through this, his injury was longer because then he had the ACL right after all of that, it took him 6 weeks to get back to 32 minutes per game. He started at under 20 minutes per. Kevin Durant played at around 25 minutes and no back-to-backs for nearly 2 months when he returned from this sort of injury. Using an example of a guy who returned too quickly, Wesley Matthews just jumped back to him playing 30 plus minutes per game and looked terrible with that. It probably wasn't worth it for the production that you get from him. So it's a slow and moderate ramp up when it comes to it. The other thing to think about is his role in these games and what they're going to ask him to do. And that's where we kind of start to measure impact beyond just the minutes that he's going to be playing, right? If he's playing 10 to 15 minutes, he's going to have a role with the reserves. You're kind of looking at him more just to kind of be the leader of a second unit and almost just like control the pace of the game. You're not going to be looking at him to have aggressive drives to the basket, something that he is known for doing. He's going to be more of a spot up 3 kind of player, maybe mid-range pull-ups, but not like aggressively driving to the basket, jumping with full force and worrying about landing or contact in those sorts of things.